Bonjour à tous.
Good morning, I'm Pierre Traîneau, and I'm at the head of the CATEL. CATEL is an expertise and resource center for e-health. And when we met the founders of the Pierre Fabre Foundation a year ago, in the framework of this project, that is to say, how can we set up a new observatory of e-health for southern country, we were immediately convinced about the fact that this was our commitment, that we could all commit to this, because we've been talking about this for many years now, and this is a project that we've been thinking about. So this observatory is really paving the way to our future initiatives. And you can go to the site or into the site through the link, which is analysis. Yeah, here we are. I'm going to show you what are our conclusions. This is the summary, and I'm going to go through what we've done. So to start with, what was our first project? What was our first approach? And I'll tell you more about the initiatives we've taken also. So to start with, we decided that we would set up an observatory. Now, how can we gather and collect all the information we need for the observatory? And our collaboration with the Pierre Fabre Foundation is really based on this. So how can we network all this? And CATEL has a network of 20,000 participants and stakeholders. We also are part, of this network with other startups and startup BRICS, especially for Asia and India, but we'll tell you more about this. So we have been working with all these networks, and this started a year ago, and we had a kind of tender which was launched. And at that time, when we launched this tender before the summer, when we came back after the holiday in September, we had more than 97 initiatives. So this means that if we look into all these projects and project holders, we see that the observatory is really paving the way for the development of these projects, because the people who are candidates to these initiatives and projects have been, answering very quickly. Today we have 143 different initiatives. So this was the very first step, or the first milestone. Then we launched another kind of tender with a questionnaire, because we have candidates, people who say, yes, I want to be part of it. I also want to be in the networking process. Well, that is the first step. Now, the second step is to make sure that these people are really going to commit. And we also have to try to define all the items we want to embed in the observatory. Therefore, we have a kind of self-assessment which is being performed by the candidates themselves. So this is why we decided with the scientific committee to forward this questionnaire, and we had 87 initiatives, and we have 51 which have been selected. Now, this is what it looks like. More than 35 countries, which are now being covered by the 51 initiatives selected. You see here on this pie chart that we have 35 countries, 51 initiatives, as I just said. And if we look at the breakdown, we see that most of these initiatives are in Western Africa, but we also have Senegal and Mali, and we have 17 initiatives in these countries. So some countries are really in the top ranking, and I'll try to comment this at a later stage. Now, coming back to what I was saying, we see here on the pie chart that we have different areas, and most of these initiatives which have been selected are here in Western Africa. What does this mean? This means that a fourth part is the south and western part of Asia, which has been one of the areas we have selected. Now, what about the maturity of these projects and initiatives? Well, if we look into the first pie chart on the left-hand side, what do we see? There's 1 out of 5 initiatives, that is to say 20%, have more than 100,000 users. And 100,000 users, as Béatrice Garrett has just reminded us, implies that this is one of the criteria. That is to say, what is the medical care we provide people with? And therefore, we have some projects where we have more than 1 million or even 3 million users. And this is one of the criteria for our selection. Now, half of these projects have not been able to reach the other threshold of more than 50 users. So in some cases, these projects still have a very strong potential in terms of healthcare. Now, this is another aspect that we try to explain in the other pie chart that you see on the right-hand side of the slide, where you have a breakdown of all the projects according to their maturity. And 2/3 of these initiatives are what we call initiatives which are now building up, which are emerging, which are still in their research and project phase. And coming back to the financial aspects, now, more than 70% of these initiatives have private financial support. And we also have public financing. Now, this means that we have co-financing, private and public financial support, co-financing. But having said this, private financial support is very important. There is quite a gap between Asia and Africa. If we look into this pie chart, we see here what the different percentages are. We have 58% of these initiatives are acknowledged as being mature, and they generate financial support means. And this is something we have to keep in mind, because if we see here what the revenues are, this will really foster the project. Now, as a way of conclusion, and I hope that I'm not lagging behind our schedule, I would like to make a few comments. We didn't see here what are the topics covered. Now, 22.5% of these projects concern what we call maternal and child health. This is really an important area in these southern countries, where there's a very strong concern for mothers and child. And if we compare these initiatives, which have been selected in Africa, and those we have in Asia, we note here that in Africa we have a different approach, which is more social-based, with projects which are being currently financed with public funding. In Asia, where we have a more business-centered approach. But in that case, it goes without saying that we also have different networks, different stakeholders, so as to make sure that the projects can become mature and develop. So it is paramount for us, when we look into all these data in all these different countries, that projects still have to develop. These projects are still not all mature, but this was not our goal. Our goal was to screen all these projects and make sure that they exist, that there's a real potential. So this was really the first step. This is why we have a tool, a wonderful tool, the Observatory. And if tomorrow we have 200 initiatives, not only 50, but 200, well, we'll be able to fine-tune all these numbers. Thank you very much.